Manx Radio's Update with Dave Moore.
The time is 5:30. You're listening to Manx Radio. I am Dave Moore and this is Update. Welcome to the programme. Half an hour of the latest news in the Isle of Man, plus Manx sport, business and travel updates along with the news makers in person. Coming up, the new Liverpool ferry terminal will finally welcome its first passengers tomorrow. And the Enterprise Minister says further discussions need to take place with Douglas City Council to address TT parking issues. That's all coming up in the next 30 minutes.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
First of all, the Update News headlines at 5:30 with Christian Jones. Fastamai.
It's been confirmed passengers will disembark the Manannan at the new Liverpool ferry terminal from tomorrow afternoon. Infrastructure Minister Tim Crookall is welcoming the move, saying it's been a hugely anticipated announcement. Police say they will relentlessly pursue organised crime groups who are trying to exploit the island. Last week, 11 people were jailed for their involvement in supplying cocaine brought in by others to undercover police officers. And Sir Mark Cavendish will begin his latest charge to make cycling history at the Tour de France. The Manx missile has now been confirmed in Astana, Kazakhstan's 8-strong squad, taking on the prestigious Grand Tour starting on Saturday. In international news, the King has sent well wishes to his sister Princess Anne, who's in hospital with minor injuries and concussion. She's expected to make a full recovery after reportedly being kicked by a horse. Rishi Sunak says he's not aware of any other Tory election candidates facing investigation by the gambling watchdog. Insider knowledge claims have been threatening to overshadow a large chunk of the Conservative campaign. And a cargo ship which struck a key bridge in the US city of Baltimore has left the harbour 3 months after the structure's collapse. The FBI has been conducting a criminal investigation into the incident in which 6 construction workers died. Those are the Update News headlines, next at 6.
Secure tomorrow today with Man Benham's guidance on powers of attorney and more. Manx Radio weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Sunny spells this evening, however there's a risk of some coastal mist redeveloping around the south of the island. Light southerly winds continue with a minimum temperature no lower than 13 Celsius overnight. Generally dry but cloudy tomorrow as the risk of coastal mist or fog patches continues, with some bright or sunny intervals possibly breaking through later in the afternoon. Top temperature up to 20 degrees Celsius as the light southerly winds become northwesterly, then strengthen a touch in the evening. Dry on Wednesday with sunny spells, light winds and a top temperature up to 20 Celsius again, turning cloudy later on with a risk of rain overnight.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate. You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
The Isle of Man Steam Packet Company's confirmed the new ferry terminal in Liverpool will see its first set of passengers tomorrow afternoon. Christian Jones has the latest.
Crews have been conducting berthing trials at the new £80 million facility since March, but the operator is warning it will take time for staff to become accustomed to the terminal and rectify any teething issues. The new landing point is 800 metres downriver from the currently used Pierhead facility. Originally due to open in summer 21, it was initially being built at a cost of £38 million. Work got underway in 2019, but the majority of the delays are due to COVID-19, plus increases in the cost of materials. A promised bus connection has not yet been given a start date by Liverpool City Council, with the steam packet advising passengers to get buses to St Nicholas Place.
This is Manx Radio. You're listening to Update. Last week, 11 people were jailed for their involvement in supplying cocaine brought in by others to undercover police officers. Detective Chief Inspector Michelle McKillop says she hopes their sentences act as a deterrent to others.
I think for a short while it will act as a deterrent. Certainly we wouldn't be running another operation like this sort of tomorrow, because I think people will will think about what they're doing and try and do it a little bit more cute. I think people will just change the way that they do it until they get confident again. As I say, it was about a decade ago when we did an undercover operation on the island. It's not something you can do every day or every week. I don't think it will stop people. As I say, people want to use cocaine and the prevalence of it is quite apparent, and the society's approach to it is apparent to me. And also, as I said before, you can get it. The people are getting drugs onto the island very, very easily. You know, it's coming in on the planes, it's coming in on the boat, it's coming in on or in people, it's coming in the fishing boats bringing it in. We've also got parcels coming in. So any which way you could get something into the Isle of Man, our borders are porous at the moment, and we really need to address that, because if we don't address that, we're not going to be able to stop this. We're not going to be able to reduce it. It's too easy. What I will say, however, is people that do bring drugs to the Isle of Man, you have to be lucky every time they do it. We only have to be lucky once. And I think the sentencing on the Isle of Man compared to the UK, when you are caught committing these crimes, should provide as a deterrent.
And many of those caught up in Operation Nightjar sought help and support from the addiction charity Motivate. Thea Ozenturk's the Chief Executive Officer. She was asked about the prevalence of cocaine in the island.
It's one of the most prevalent drugs that we see here in our drug service, the drug branch service that we have at Motivate, which is called Drug Aware. We could argue that it has become normalised in popular culture. It's a party drug. A lot of people now will use it. There's a lot of local anecdotal evidence as well that it is a popular drug of choice. Unfortunately, there is a market for it, and people don't start out with it being a problem. It starts out with people wanting to use it recreationally and have some fun, but it can become a problem because, like any drug, it's addictive. And it really does work on those neural pathways in the reward centre of your brain and increases your dopamine. And once you start using a drug like that, it becomes quite moreish and you want to do it again and repeat the experience again and again. I think it was seen as a drug that only rich people could afford in days gone by. It had names like, Champagne Charlie, they used to call it, but now it's Coke. It's blow. It's got a range of names. It has become normalised, there's no doubt about it, as has cannabis and other drugs, of choice now of today with young people. Mm-hmm. But quite often the people that get found out are the ones that may be selling drugs, to people on the street, are at the end of it, if you like. They're at the more exposed end. The Isle of Man has its own version of county lines where you may start off using drugs, which then becomes a problem, and then you have to fund that.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Realising the opportunities of renewable energy to stimulate economic growth and support decarbonisation efforts was on the agenda of the 41st British-Irish Council Summit held in the Isle of Man last Friday. First to speak was the island's Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon.
The important thing is, I think, that you're seeing and achieving clear progress. For us, we set the 2030 target as well. And at the moment, we are just about on track, but it is getting increasingly tight.
Scotland has reduced emissions by 57% since 1990, so we're more than halfway there to net zero. And the recent issue we've had to address is the fact that there are legally binding targets which we would statutorily be unable to form a plan for, which we just have to we have to put more time into those targets.
From an Irish perspective, we're fully committed to the targets that we've set, and a bit like the First Minister of Scotland, we're fully committed to them because they're the right thing to do, but we're also fully committed to them because we've taken a policy decision in Ireland to ensure that they're legally binding. And of course, as a member state of the European Union, they're also binding at a European level as well. That doesn't mean it's easy. Each of our jurisdictions, each of our administrations need to look at how we can accelerate and do more in this space.
These targets are challenging. We're all very aware of that. I think we have a responsibility to be honest with people about that. These are challenging targets. And I think that's why events like today are really critical, very important in terms of trying to meet those targets.
In the last quarter of 2023, a quarterly record share of the UK's total electricity generation came from renewable sources. And for the first time ever, those sources accounted for over half the UK's electricity generation in that period. That's a success story, and we should be proud of that.
There is no shortage of investment capital. And as I mentioned to my colleagues around the table earlier, Guernsey is at the vanguard of the Green Finance Initiative, and it is a specialist centre for the provision of capital of this type.
One sure way not to hit targets, and that's not to have targets. From Jersey's perspective, our small island, sometimes we think, well, what's the point? What can we do in our little island that's going to affect the planet? But we've put bold targets in place. We intend to stick to them, and I would rather have an ambitious target in place and get 90% there than not have a target in place and not get anywhere.
You heard Chief Minister Alfred Cannon, Scottish First Minister John Swinney, Irish Taoiseach Simon Harris, Northern Ireland Deputy First Minister Emma Little Pengelly, the UK's Northern Ireland Secretary Chris Heaton-Harris, Guernsey Deputy and former Chief Minister Lyndon Trott, and Jersey Chief Minister Lyndon Farnham. The Deputy Chair of the Climate Change Transformation Board says he's not afraid to listen to those whose opinions differ to his own. Paul Crane MLC was an attendee at the recent Why Net Zero Will Be a Disaster for the Isle of Man meeting held in Douglas.
And that was an interesting experience. The first time I spoke, I felt a degree of hostility until someone in the meeting said, we should be thankful that he's come. I respect him for the bravery of turning up. And I got a round of applause. So that kind of broke the ice a bit. So I did raise a number of issues, yes.
And how were they received?
How were they received? I think I was made to feel that it was okay at that meeting to voice views different from those being voiced at the front. So I didn't feel that...
Do you feel that last night's meeting was beneficial for the island, or did it muddy the waters further and we're just going round and round in circles?
I think it probably muddied the waters further. That would be my own view, but I accept that some of the people there absolutely welcomed what was being said, welcomed the chance to hear it being said. I recognise that. I would be absolutely delighted if I could see scientific evidence to say, this is not happening. We've got it wrong, everybody. I'd be so thrilled and so relaxed, because that would be, one of the biggest sort of threats on the horizon gone. So I'd love that, but I'm not seeing anything that convinces me that that's where we're at or that we're going to suddenly hit that position. I look more broadly than climate. I see we're probably in the sixth major extinction, the number of species going. We've got the Great Pacific garbage patch of plastics in the sea. We've got biodiversity loss. We've got a whole string of environmental issues running, and they have to be addressed. We have to live sustainably.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
Beacon Energy plc said production at the SCHB2 well was substantially lower than expected. The Isle of Man-based worldwide oil and gas exploration company reconnected the well located in Germany's Erfelden field to production facilities on June the 12th following the demobilisation of the rig. Beacon Energy shares were down 66% at 0.0046 pence each today in London. The UK's main political parties have ducked addressing stark choices over public finances in their manifestos, and it will be a considerable surprise if taxes are not increased over the next 5 years, according to a leading think tank. The Institute for Fiscal Studies accuses Labour and the Conservatives of engaging in a conspiracy of silence and ignoring painful choices. It says the UK has the highest debt level for more than 60 years, taxes are near a record high, and spending has swelled, but public services are visibly struggling. While the UK government is paying huge interest on debts and welfare bills have grown, spending on health is likely to rise because of an ageing population, while defence funding will have to increase. Meanwhile, economic growth is subdued.
The Stock Market Report, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed today as investors sold big technology names in favour into other sectors such as banks and energy. Nvidia fell more than 5%, heading to its 4% decline last week that snapped an 8-week winning streak. London stocks rallied, helped along by solid performances from Prudential and Frasers Group as investors eyed the release of key US inflation and UK growth figures. The dollar eased from a near 8-week high on Monday, with traders back on alert for intervention to support the yen. Gold prices rose today, helped by a pullback in the dollar. Oil prices firmed slightly as traders weighed support from expected summer demand. And on to the markets. The FTSE 100 is at 8301. That's up 0.77%. The Dow Jones 39526, up 0.97%. The exchange rates, the pound against the dollar 1.269, against the euro 1.183. Commodities has US gold at $2,330, that's up 0.41%, and Brent is at 85.04 US dollars, that's up 0.04%.
I'm running late again. Do you know where I put my car keys?
In the fridge.
Where's my phone?
Under the dog basket.
Bye.
You haven't forgotten that we're seeing Ramsay Crookall later?
Oh, no, of course not. 5 p.m, is it?
3:45.
I'll be there.
Life is busy. That's why Ramsay Crookall's team takes time to help you make a mindful investment decision, considering all the options, giving you full control of your financial future. Less stress, more assurance.
Forgot to put my shoes on.
Oh.
See how we can make your money work for you. Call 717171 or visit ramsaycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
The Environment, Food and Agriculture Minister Claire Barber says almost having to cancel the Isle of Man Food and Drink Festival 2 years in a row highlights a significant risk in the way the department is behind the event and supporting the food sector. This follows the announcement that this year's event has been scrapped.
We're listening to all those different groups and we're definitely hearing some of the challenges they face. But from my perspective, that's the thing we absolutely are committed to working with the steam packet in conversation with Treasury about. But also, we want to encourage export, and we know that we've got businesses on Ireland who are managing to export and do that profitably and successfully.
In 2021, when you were talking about the festival itself, you said it plays a significant role in growing the food and drink sector, which is a key goal in our Food Matters strategy. Is that not the case anymore?
When I spoke then, we hadn't had 2 years where we'd really been at risk of losing this. I suppose that's been something that really played on my mind. We spent a lot of time considering, could we go ahead when we had the sad passing of Her Majesty? And interesting, we had some quite negative feedback actually for our decision to proceed. But the reality for us is, because we're sinking all our costs into one event, if we choose to cancel it late notice, or, as last year, if the weather potentially had have led to us having to cancel, we did go ahead. But obviously, as we know, we had to then resolve the Villa Marina grounds, which had turned into something of a swamp, and that put people off as well attending. Because we're putting everything into that, we really are at risk. If we lose that, then all the money that we're using to promote food and drink in 1 year is lost, and I can't recover that cost. So I think absolutely, I stand by what I said at that point. I hadn't had the benefit of seeing those 2 years of significant risk. And actually, I think there's an opportunity to de-risk, but also, as I say, to try to move away from the one-size-fits-all model.
Manx Radio Sport.
First to my Rob Pritchard.
First am I. Good evening. Starting with cycling, and Isle of Man pro rider Max Walker has claimed a second medal during this year's British National Road Championships. The Astana, Kazakhstan development team competitor secured bronze during the elite men's road race event on Sunday. He finished 21 seconds behind eventual winner, Ineos Grenadiers' Ethan Hayter, whilst Groupama FDJ rider Lewis Askey took second. Walker's latest podium comes after he also took silver in the elite men's time trial event at the championships last Wednesday. Elsewhere in Sunday's road race, Ireland resident and former British National Road champion Ben Swift finished in 12th, while Samparan rider and Manxman Tyler Hannay came home in 22nd spot. Meanwhile, in the elite women's road race earlier in the day, the Isle of Man's Becky Storey secured a top 25 finish. She went on to take 23rd place, whilst her team DSM Firmenich PostNL teammate Pfeiffer Georgie claimed the British champion jersey for the second year running. Also in cycling, Sir Mark Cavendish will begin his latest charge to make cycling history later this week at the 2024 Tour de France. The Manx missile has now been confirmed in Astana, Kazakhstan's 8-strong squad, taking on the prestigious Grand Tour for 2024, which starts on Saturday and runs until the 21st of July. He's currently the joint all-time Tour de France stage wins record holder on 34 victories, alongside cycling legend Eddie Merckx. Cavendish was forced to withdraw from the Tour partway through last year's event because of injuries sustained in a crash on stage 8. And finally, in motorsport, it was another strong showing for former Ireland resident Harry Payne and passenger Kevin Rousseau in the latest round of the FIM Sidecar World Championship at the weekend. Round 3 of the series took competitors to Most in the Czech Republic. In the opening 10-lap sprint race on Saturday, the Steinhausen Racing duo finished second behind Markus Schlosser and Lukas Schmidt. It was the same result in the main 17-lap race the following day, with Payne and Rousseau taking P2 behind Schlosser and Schmidt by just 0.26 seconds. The next round of the championship will be in Assen in the Netherlands in August.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
We'll begin at the airport, and unfortunately the EasyJet flight that was due to go at 5:40 was cancelled. However, the Loganair at 6 o'clock is showing on time to Liverpool, and the Loganair to Edinburgh at 7:55 is also showing on time, as to the EasyJet service to Gatwick, which is due to depart Ronaldsway at 8:05. In terms of the arrivals, the Birmingham was cancelled that was due in from Loganair at 4:25 this afternoon, as to that EasyJet service from Liverpool at 5:10. Manchester landed on time, and should also be the Loganair Edinburgh flight at 7:25 showing on time. The Gatwick EasyJet flight due at 8:25 also showing as due to arrive on time. Also, the Liverpool Loganair at 5:08 and the London City Loganair service at 10:09 also showing on time. In terms of the roads, I have unconfirmed report that the main road at Sulby is closed due to a traffic accident. That is unconfirmed. Temporary lights on the bridge over the harbour at Douglas at the moment. Also temporary lights on Alexander Drive, and also at Tremode as well at the end of Johnny Watterson's Lane. Temporary lights on Vicarage Road as well at Farm Hill. East Baldwin, the East Baldwin Road is closed, I should say. At Laxey, temporary lights on the Ramsey Road and also on May Hill and in Ramsey. And at Sulby Bridge, there are temporary lights also in position. And that's it for now.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre, with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with
The Enterprise Minister says the challenges of TT24 and further discussions must take place between his department and Douglas City Council. Tim Johnson's thanking officials for their work over the fortnight, but says the local authorities' decisions to modify parking arrangements created additional work.
With reduced capacity overall and a prohibition on general public car parking on Neville's Park at the request of Douglas City Council. Some of the priority areas will include improved power provision, enhanced utilisation of the overall site, and further ideas to prepare for and deal with prolonged periods of adverse weather.
The one person who's pretty heavily involved in the TT, to me, summed it up perfectly when they said, we're trying to put on, and they are, a world-class event in a field.
It's perhaps a little stark, but I think I recognise the fact that whereas the department owns the actual grandstand itself, the rest of the site we do lease temporarily from Douglas City Council. It is important that we have a good relationship with them moving forward. They have put some extra challenges in our way this year, and certainly we will be wanting to discuss further in a debrief post-event what effects they've had and how we can sort of move together forward to make the event work. Recognising, as the Honourable Member says, there is a need for investment in the site, and certainly we will be very willing and interested in having those conversations.
A planned critical instance taking place at Nobles Hospital overnight tonight. The electrics need upgrading. Manx Care Chief Executive Officer Teresa Cope is hoping it'll be a smooth operation.
It will largely be business as usual, but what we have put out in our comms is that there will be quite a number of engineers on site. There may be some additional noise. There will be probably more people around than normal, and all wards have got sort of kits with what they would need, torches, etc. So for a patient, you shouldn't feel or see a huge amount of difference, but we are just making sure people are aware and just asking for their sort of patience and understanding during this time.
Just remind us when exactly these outages are going to be.
We start our first outage on Monday the 24th, which will run from 9 p.m. until the latest at 1 a.m. Thursday the 27th, same time, 9 p.m. until 1 a.m. And on Monday the 1st of July, same, 9 p.m. until 1 a.m. And at that point, we should have completed all of that work.
And we just found out that tonight's has been postponed for 24 hours. Russian MHK Michelle Haywood is calling for stringent new controls on the sale of tobacco to young people.
There's actually three parts to the bill that I'm asking for permission for. One is there are some tobacco products that are not covered by the current legislation, so you could sell those to children and minors quite cheerfully, legally. That obviously is a loophole that needs closing. The second is that there are lots of ways of delivering nicotine now. And I think what we've seen is a very cynical move from the tobacco companies that once smoking started in decline, they look for new markets and they call them the next generation products. And so we've already taken action over vaping, but there are other nicotine delivery methods that are being sold, like skin absorbed sprays and little pouches that you tuck in the side of your mouth and things like that as well. So those are not covered by the current legislation, and I believe they should be. And then because I wanted to fix those loopholes, it's given me the option to ask Tynwald to see whether they will agree to a generational ban, which is something that New Zealand first attempted to put into legislation. A change of government, and the incoming government decided they'd rather have the tax revenue than protect public health, meant that they rescinded it and didn't enact it in the end. And then obviously the UK had draft legislation that they were discussing before the election was called. And I believe the change in regime, probably that bill will come back again. So I think this is the way that, generally that the world is moving. But because I wanted to address the other loopholes in our tobacco legislation, it was the ideal opportunity to invite my colleagues to consider whether they thought generational controls would be an advisable thing to have here. Actually been discussing these controls for well over a year. So I've had numerous conversations with my colleagues, and I do believe that there is some support for it.
That's it for Update, compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thank you, newsreader Christian Jones and producer Amy Griffiths. And if you have a comment on the news agenda, a story you think we should be covering, or just want to say hi, from near or far, email update@manxradio.com. And the stories you've heard on this update and much more Manx news, plus interviews and podcasts, and the web's biggest source of Manx videos are all at manxradio.com and via the free Manx Radio app. All you need to do is like Manx Radio on Facebook, follow us on X, and subscribe to the Manx Radio YouTube channel. That's it for Update for tonight. Thanks for your company. Coming up, the news at 6.